This is Middle Class Matt from don'tbuythehype.blogspot. I am the sports genius, and I am the UNC fan and Duke hater. Watched USA basketball today. The reason I mentioned I'm a UNC fan and a Duke hater is that I want to be upfront about that, because I don't want people to think that I have any bias, or not think that I have any bias, because I do. I really felt like it was a poor coaching job today in the USA basketball game that Coach K did. I think that was one of the biggest factors to make this game so close, 99-94 to Lithuania. Lithuania has some good players. Has a guy named Pocius that played for Duke. Maybe he wanted to light up USA basketball because Coach K hardly gave him any playing time. Seemed that he did. He had a big game. They have a guy named Yesikavicius. I can't hardly say his name. He played for Maryland. I remember watching him. He's a great international player, even though he's not a big-time pro like LeBron James or Kevin Durant or Carmelo Anthony, all the other names. So those guys had big games today, but I really felt like it was Coach K's philosophy that really hurt the USA team. What he likes to do is put high pressure on the ball. So as the ball comes down to the three-point line, he likes to put that high ball pressure on the other team. And when you do that, if the other team has a good big man, or if they can run a pick and roll, or if they can have someone who penetrates and drive to the basket, it leaves the basket wide open. Now, Duke wins lots of games with this, but a lot of times it's because there's not a whole lot of quality point guards in college. And so by putting the pressure on the point guard, what ends up happening is that you diffuse the team's rhythm and being able to run their sets and their schemes and different things like that. Well, this is not college basketball. These are pro-caliber players, international players. A lot of these guys are in their 30s. They're experienced. They're not going to fall for that. So you have to have a big man to block shots. Well, then Coach K sticks Tyson Chandler, the only real defensive presence, and a really good one. Defensive Player of the Year in the NBA, 7'1", huge wingspan, can block shots. 8 minutes. Tyson Chandler for 8 minutes. Now, there's something he saw that he didn't like about what Chandler was doing, but I just think that's a dumb move. Even Kevin Love, who's not a great shot blocker, is a big man. He only played 12 minutes. He had a pretty good game for only playing 12 minutes. So he went small, and he wanted to do that to create more offense, and he would probably say that that ended up winning the game, or because they forced turnovers, it helped win the game. But it made an ugly basketball game, which is typical of Duke basketball. They win a lot of games. No Carolina fan, no fan in the nation is going to say, well, Duke doesn't win a lot of games. They win a lot of games. And they're really good at working the refs. You'll see Coach K working the refs. And I'm so glad he's working the refs for Team USA and not against the Tar Heels, which is what's happened, over the last 2 decades. But it to me, like, it made them really struggle, and it was an ugly game today. It was an ugly game that LeBron James had to pull out in the end, and it wasn't fluid, and it wasn't a dominant performance. This is the reason that I had such a long time I didn't want to buy the hype on the USA team. I either buy the hype or don't buy the hype. I eventually said after the 83-point win that I was going to buy the hype for the USA team. But the reason I was so hesitant in doing it is because of performances like this. And like I said, what Coach K did really, I think, kept the U.S. team from blowing them out. Now, in the end, they caused so many turnovers that ended up winning the ball game by 5 points. Not a very impressive victory, but that did help win the ball game, and that's what Coach K's philosophy is, that we're going to make them turn the ball over, and that's going to lead to easy buckets at the other end. But mainly the reason they won is because LeBron James is a man among boys. He just took the ball game over. He said, nobody can stop me. I'm going to do it. So it really was LeBron James bailing out Coach K, because he got out-coached by Lithuania's coach, period. When you got a team like that with nothing but NBA All-Stars against guys that are a bunch of former college players and a few pros, they had a few pros and a few former college players, and you only win by 5 points, you got out-coached. Hands down, you got out-coached. But LeBron just said, I'm going to take this ball game over. Had 20 points, had a lot of them in the fourth quarter, had 9 points in the last 4 minutes. Monster dunk, big-time three, shots with hands in his face, defense all over him, no problem. So LeBron James bailed out the USA team today, and that's why they won. So I think that's not a huge deal. One thing the USA team needs to look to the future for is Russia, maybe. They seem to be doing really well, and they have Kurlenko and some other good players. So it's going to be interesting. I really didn't see Russia as being a threat, but they're 4-0, so we'll see how that goes. But USA is going to have to look to the future and not just rely on LeBron James. Their philosophy of putting ball pressure is not a bad one. It wins a lot of games for Duke, for Coach K, but you got to have a big man in there to enforce. And Lithuania just drove and cut down the middle and just sliced them up. And got easy buckets. Every team now is going to watch that film in the international play or in the Olympics and going to try to do the same thing. So Coach K better adapt, not get out-coached again. And LeBron James, or the USA team, doesn't need to rely on him to take over games like that. So it should be interesting to see what happens. I still have confidence in the USA team. I still buy the hype, but they did struggle today. So this is Middle Class Matt from Don't Buy the Hype. I'll check you next USA basketball game.